On August 13th, 1771, a healthy baby boy was born. This boy, the son of the heir to the Scots, will grow to impact the world heavily while doing what he loves, writing books. Who is this boy, you may ask? He is none other than Walter Scott, a brilliant novelist and exquisite sheriff deputy. Scott was the ninth child born to his family. However, 5 of his siblings sadly died at infancy, and a 6th died when he was 5 months old. That's not the end of the sorrow, for Scott contracted polio, a crippling and potentially deadly infectious disease, when he was 18 months old, leaving him lame for the rest of his life. This was the beginning of his road to an awe-inspiring author. Scott's father, coincidentally also named Walter Scott, sent him to his grandfather's home, Sandyknowe, in hopes of curing his disease with fresh air. Here is where Scott spends most of his young life and gains most of his influences. During his stay at his grandfather's home, Scott couldn't do much, so he spent his time listening to his aunt read him stories. His aunt, named Jenny, would read in a specific way that always intrigued young Scott, thus sparking his forever love of ballads, a poem of short stanzas that narrates a story. Scott's Aunt Jenny wasn't his only source of inspiration. His grandmother, Barbara Scott, often told him stories of border warfare between the Scots and the English, so when his grandfather, Robert Scott, died in 1775, the younger boy had a strong understanding of storytelling and ancient oral border tradition, in which he later employed into his novels. In 1779, Scott entered high school, where he met his future business partner, James Ballantyne, the son of a local shopkeeper. In the beginning, Scott felt at a disadvantage, for his knowledge of Latin was inferior to his peers, but he soon began to excel. The soon-to-be author eventually left high school and entered Edinburgh University in 1783. At the end of the first semester, Scott shocked his Greek teacher with an essay arguing that Ariosto was a superior poet. This led to his professional life as a lawyer. Scott left college after 2 years, and in 1786 he began his apprenticeship to the profession of Writer to the Signet, a Scots equivalent of the English attorney, in his father's office. While working there, he made the most important decision of his life. Would he follow in his father's footsteps, or go above and beyond? With the help from his father, Scott made the decision to become a lawyer and enrolled once again at Edinburgh University to take a Scots law class. In 1792, Scott successfully passed his examinations and managed to find work on the Jedburgh circuit. During his time as a lawyer, Scott married Charlotte Carpenter in 1797 on Christmas Eve and lived happily with her until she died in 1826. As Scott's family grew, he needed to find a more stable source of income, and the birth of his first child, Sophia, in 1799 didn't help. He needed to find another job, and quick. During this time, James Ballantyne privately printed Scott's ballad, The Eve of St. John. Eventually, he received some help from Andrew Plummer, sheriff deputy of Selkirkshire. Plummer's health was failing him, so he couldn't take on the role of deputy much longer. Scott jumped on this opportunity, and he went to London to become Plummer's successor. With this new job as sheriff deputy, Scott was able to pay off his finances, and he even had quite a bit of free time on his hands, which he used to increase his ballad collection. Nonetheless, in 1805, Scott once again began to worry about his financial security as he was awaiting the birth of his fourth child, Charles. Scott got his first taste of success as an author during this time from his two ballads, Minstrelsy of the Scottish Border, which was published in 1800, and The Lay of the Last Minstrel. Despite this success, his literary earnings were not exact, and he felt his literary ambitions were alienating him from his clients, so he sought out a higher-paying post. In 1806, Scott's wish was granted when one of the principal clerks of the Court of Session was going deaf. Scott managed to obtain the position while also being able to keep his original job as sheriff deputy. In 1809, Scott's old friend and partner, James Ballantyne, founded his publishing firm with Scott as the co-owner. Through this, James remains as Scott's publisher till the fall of the company in 1813. Due to the fall of the company, Scott nearly went bankrupt for 13 years. Luckily, he managed to be rescued by his patron, the Duke of Buccleuch, who generously agreed to stand guarantor behind an overdraft of £4,000. In between these 13 years, on 1821, Scott's publisher at the time, Archibald Constable, provided the original spark for one of Scott's novels. Constable suggested that Scott narrate the adventures of John Dixwell, Edward Whalley, and William Joffe, three regicides signatories to the death warrant of Charles I, who fled to New England following the Restoration and were taken captive by pirates. Scott adopted the suggestion of giving a pirate a central role, but rejected Constable's further plot hints. Instead, he used his memories of Orkney and Shetland, which he visited in 1814. In Orkney, Scott heard the tale of the Orkney pirate, John Gow. The desperate author used many elements of Gow's story and formed them into The Pirate. The story, The Pirate, is about a young boy, Mordaunt Merton, that lives in Orkney. His life is great, and he has an amazing relationship with local sisters, Mina and Brenda Troyle. However, the arrival of the shipwrecked pirate captain, Cleveland, spoils young Mordaunt's relationship with the Troyle girls, and soon a bitter rivalry grows between the two men. Mina falls in love with Cleveland, not knowing his true profession. Brenda, however, is in love with Mordaunt. The pirates capture the Troyles, but after an encounter with the frigate HMS Halcyon, they are freed. Brenda and Mordaunt are reunited, and Mina and Cleveland parted. Lavish praise for the book came from the Scotsmen in the Blackwoods, for whom Scott was one of the greatest of all national historians. The former, however, criticized it for its obsessive descriptions of Shetlandic localities. Despite these critical reservations, The Pirate was an immediate success and remained one of Scott's most popular and most reprinted works throughout the 19th century. On September 21st, 1832, the brilliant author suffered a stroke and sadly died. Scott gathered the different strands of current novel writing techniques into his own hands and harnessed them to his deep interest in Scottish history. The technique of the all-knowing narrator and the use of regional speech, localized settings, sophisticated character delineation, and romantic themes treated in a realistic manner were all combined by him into virtually a new literary form, the historical novel. His influence on other European and American novelists was profound, and though interest in some of his books declined somewhat in the 20th century, his reputation remains secure.